Okay. We need to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, Keith.
Second. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion. Oh, but we have a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. We can vote on it and then discuss.
I'd like to.
No, we have to discuss first. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. We got to discuss. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. It's second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Brad has his hand up. I'm going to go with Brad first. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Martha. Just a couple of points of clarification. First is that, I had proposed something to be put on the agenda for tonight's meeting, and there's a little bit of back and forth and confusion about that. And I just wanted to confirm that the issue that I raised is part of the agenda in Article 5, other ways to collaborate. Is that what that's for? And my second question or comment or suggestion is maybe tonight would be a good night to sort of review the process for getting things on the agenda if you're a committee member. I just found it a little confusing, and I think it would be good for everybody if we could go over that, especially since, given my experience in the last week and then Dave's experience at the last meeting.
Yeah, we do plan on addressing all of that under the Article 5 on updates that will be discussed. Dave.
Thank you. I would like to amend the agenda by changing the language on Article 5, changing the word update to discussion. Update implies to me a one-way conversation. I presume you intended a multi-level conversation, so I would like the word to say discussion rather than update.
Mary Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to address Brad's, the issue he raised, and maybe pull it out of 5 as it relates to the agenda. Brad had asked for the topic of other ways to collaborate and consolidation of central office to be an agenda item. And we all just got the Levinson report, determining whether or not there are other ways to collaborate and consolidate administrative services are not part of our charge. The statute gives that power to contract with other school boards for joint programs and services, facilities, and professional staff to the school boards. That said, the work the school board they're doing to the 2 districts around these issues may help inform our decision about whether or not to recommend a merger. That study report is a report by MAUSD, retained Nate Leverson, a national expert to examine the issue as well as other issues. That report has been circulated. We're requesting that all study members study the report and attend the MAUSD meeting presenting the discussion on January 25th, 2022 at 6:00 p.m. And then once we've completed that, our intention is to then discuss whether the study committee wants to get a report from the boards on these issues or gather any other information as the study committee as a whole believes may be helpful to our work on determining whether or not to recommend a merger. So that's that's sort of that was going to be discussed under Article 5, but Brad, I wanted to share that with you now, just for clarity in terms of what that agenda item consists of, vis-a-vis your request for that issue to be put on the agenda for today's meeting.
We do have a motion and an amendment and all that right now, and I'm feeling like we're in the middle of discussing. So is there more discussion on this? Brad has his hand up. Yep, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to respond to Mary Kate's statement, I think, you know, I have not had an opportunity to present what I intend to present tonight, and frankly, Mary Kate's sort of description of my request to put a proposal up for discussion tonight is a much narrower version of what I'm proposing. I mean, I think that the proposal is really unrelated to is unrelated to a reading of the Nathanson report. It doesn't just cover administrative issues, and I think that I would think that I should have the opportunity to talk about the proposal that I had presented to the co-chairs.
Is there any other discussion? Mary Kate.
Yeah, Brad, I didn't mean to, I tried to summarize it. I understand I didn't get everything in your proposal, but I think, and perhaps you disagree, but I think having the Nate Leatherson study, being familiar with that and getting updated and understanding what the MAUSD board has done is going to inform that work. And after we've done that, having a discussion and you having that as an agenda item with you also sharing in more detail your thoughts and opinion on that would make sense. But it seems like, at least to us, that part of what you're asking to discuss is will be informed by that study and our discussion about what we want, what the committee wants as a whole, and how the committee wants to move forward would be better, a better discussion and more informed discussion after everybody's had a chance to look at that report and hear the MAUSD board presentation.
I don't know. I mean, I see these committee meetings to be an opportunity for all of us to express our ideas and our opinions, and simply putting it off just seems like an exercise in not allowing that to happen. I don't think anything that I'm going to say tonight has any bearing on the Nathanson report and vice versa. It is just it's just a proposal to expand some of the inquiries that we're making in a productive way, and I think that I should have that opportunity to present that and not be put off for who knows how long.
Dave, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Although I agree with Brad, that wasn't the reason for my amendment. The discussion that there is part of step 5 was a update on the legal. I forget the exact wording, and I don't have the agenda up in front of me, but the legal implications of school closures. And that's the item that I'm interested in having a discussion about, as I tried to move in our last meeting and was ruled out of order. And I'm again trying to have a discussion about that. I want to make sure that my constituents understand that I am trying to have that discussion here. And so that's why I'm asking for the change from update to discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any more discussion on the agenda? And with the amendment in there, we can vote. I'm trying to think, does the amendment have to be seconded? Brad's gonna pipe in here.
Martha, just one other quick question. I was wondering, in light of the, in Dave's characterization of being ruled out of order, where does his motion stand with respect to tonight's agenda? Is it something that we are going to discuss or not?
That is also part of 5. It is part of 5. Yes.
And I take it
under meeting process.
And I take it that since there a motion hasn't, or the item hasn't been warned officially, that we wouldn't be able to do a vote tonight. Is that right?
Nope, no action. Correct.
Yes, I think the amendment needs to be seconded. Then we discuss that, and then we vote on that, and then whether it passes or fails, then we vote on the original motion to accept the agenda.
Yeah, that is what. So there's a motion on the floor to amend the agenda from on Article 5 on the agenda and change the word update to discuss. Is there anyone that wants to second that?
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, Brad. Is there any discussion? Okay, having no further discussion, all those in favor of amending the agenda, of adopting the agenda with the amendment of updating, of changing the word update to discuss in Article 5, please say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. We will change Article 5 to discuss instead of update. And we have an adopted agenda, so we can move forward. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping and remind everyone that due to open meeting laws, we cannot, we should not be using the chat feature because it violates our open meeting laws. And I just want to remind everyone of that at the beginning of the meeting so we don't run into that. We need to approve the minutes, Article 3 of the January 3rd, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Keith.
A second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 3rd, 2022 meeting. Is there any discussion? Having no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please give a thumbs up.
Aye.
All those opposed and thumbs down. Dave, with any abstentions? Erica has an abstention.
Because it was not unanimous, Martha, you should do a roll call.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So we'll go back.
Lori could help by going through the roll.
Yep. So Carol.
Thumbs up.
Becca. Keith.
Aye.
Mary? Erica?
I'm abstaining. I haven't had a chance to look at them.
Mary Kate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Brad? I didn't see it. Brad, yes, no?
No.
No.
Oh. Stephanie? Dave?
No.
Dustin?
Aye.
Troy? Kevin?
Yes.
And Ed?
Yes.
Okay. So I have 2 no's, 1 abstention.
Correct. And the motion carries. Therefore, the minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, Article 4 is the February and March meeting dates and the January 25th Mount Abe Union High School meeting. Just the there are people that aren't of it. The dates are a little bit awkward. I'm not sure if anyone was able to see that. What was scheduled, and we need to discuss that.
Right. I raised with you several months ago the challenge of the meeting dates as they fall in February and March. They fall back to back just because of the way the first Monday and the third Tuesday fall in those particular months. And it is very challenging to turn around work products, minutes, agendas, things like that in a 1-week time frame. Not out of the question, and it can be done if that works for you. There are also some challenges for some folks with the February 15th date. So wanted to bring you back to that scheduling framework that we raised for people to think about and be aware of several months ago, and ask if you would like to make any changes to the meeting schedule. And one strategy that was proposed was for committee members to commit to attending or watching the recording of the January 25th meeting in lieu of the meeting on the 15th. Still continue to go ahead and meet on the 7th, but understanding the additional time people are committing, that might be a part of a strategy to manage the meeting schedule in the upcoming weeks.
Any discussion on that? Does everyone think that sounds like a good idea to encourage all of us to attend the MAUSD meeting on January 25th in lieu of the February 15th meeting? Can I see like a thumbs up of people that think it's okay to make sure everyone is okay with that? Or okay, it looks like a little bit of a general consensus to do that. I think we will move forward with that. And then March, we run into, I'm looking for town meetings here. I don't know everybody's town meeting in all these different towns, so when they'll be held. But Tracy, you want to do?
Sure. I just was playing around with a couple of options. And obviously one might be to move the second meeting in March back a week. I can't remember now. I looked at so many options today. Hang on just a sec. There is a school district MAUSD board meeting on Tuesday the 22nd. So just simply moving it back a Tuesday would be challenging, but perhaps the 21st or the 23rd. Another strategy could be having a meeting the week of the 28th of February. That's the week before town meeting. I don't know what people's workloads and commitment loads are, and I know there probably will be some informational meetings that week, so that might not be optimal, but it would keep a 2-week spread between a meeting around February 28th and the 1st. Oh no, it wouldn't. Never mind. Withdraw that suggestion. How about the week of the 21st?
You're thinking 2 meetings in March, sort of one week and one the next. One the week of the 7th and one the week of the 14th, or changing the day of the one on the week of the 21st.
Changing the 7th could go ahead as scheduled. Perhaps changing the 15th, sorry, I have 2 computers going, changing the 15th to maybe the 21st or the 23rd, understanding that the 22nd is a board meeting for some folks.
The 21st.
Addison Northwest has a board meeting on the 21st.
All right, so that doesn't work either.
It would have to be the 23rd. And is everyone available on the 23rd and willing?
Could you just clarify that's the 23rd of March?
Yes, March 23rd. You can show a thumbs up.
Whatever. I may be at a conference on the 23rd.
Okay. It looks like the majority of people are available and willing on the 23rd, so I think we should tentatively plan that. Erica has a comment.
Oh, just a question. So I'm trying to keep track. Does that mean there's no meetings between February 7th and March 7th?
Correct.
That's correct. And there's a break from school that week in that window, so that would be helpful for the administrative team and educators who need a break.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Article 5, we will be discussing questions and feedback between meetings, legal considerations for school closures, meeting process, committee board conflict of interest, and other ways to collaborate, and the Levinson report, which has already been touched on. I'm going to begin with discussion on questions and feedback between meetings. What we heard when the committee was first formed was that transparency is something that everyone felt was really important to them. And I think we feel in order to remain open, transparent, and in compliance with the Vermont open meeting laws, Mary Kate and I have decided that we will not be responding to emails, but we will add them to our update at the next meeting after the email has been received, so that we can share with you what other people have been sending for emails. That way, everyone is aware of what's going on behind the scenes, I guess, per se, might be the proper word. And yep, Brad, you're muted.
Hi, Martha. Just so I'm clear, are you talking about emails from whom? From like the community that goes directly to you and Mary Kate? Is that what you're talking about, or what?
No, we're talking about from the committee members.
Oh, from committee members. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yep. If we had to update all the ones we get from the community, we'd be here for weeks. So. And Mary Kate's gonna discuss legal considerations for school closures.
Okay, so consistent with what Martha just said, the next items on the agenda are issues that were raised in emails, and just want to share that information with everybody so that we're all on the same page, and we're being transparent by discussing it in an open meeting. Before doing that, though, I do want to acknowledge that we did get a number of emails from community members, primarily Starksboro community members, and the board the study committee has received those emails, and thank you for sending those along. So we received a question about the last presentation, the presentation at the last meeting on legal considerations related to including articles of school closures in our articles. So there was some confusion about that, and this is to clarify and summarize what was presented. Historically, legal counsel has generally advised against articles on school closures because the statutes give that authority to the electorate of the district and to school boards, and it's not included in the list of required articles for a merger under the statutes. Nonetheless, merger study committees have sometimes included articles on school closures, and voters have approved such articles. None of these have been challenged in court, so it remains an open question as to whether or not such articles are enforceable. So that's just to clarify that. Any discussion on that?
Oh, rats. I'm trying to discuss.
Dave's got his hand up. Yep, okay.
So thank you. I'd like to call your attention to the presentation made by, I'm trying to draw it up here, but I can't seem to find it. Here it is, on page 7 of the Levinson report. Seems to substantiate what a point I made several meetings ago. And it's labeled number 4, merging the central office and middle and high schools with ANWSD meets the evaluation criteria very well if the merger agreement includes giving the towns a vote before closing an elementary school in their town. So I want to emphasize that if it includes giving the towns a vote before closing an elementary school in their town. So that supports the position that I made several meetings ago, that I didn't think a merger agreement would pass the voters if it did not have such a Loctite provision, ironclad provision, I think is the language I used, in the articles, giving towns the right to vote on repurposing or closing their schools before a town vote. And that was the purpose of my motion last week. And I think that at some point, if this board is serious about a unified district, as they indicated with a vote, they are overwhelmingly, you are overwhelmingly supporting the notion of a unified district. I don't think that'll pass a vote in the MAUSD district without an ironclad provision regarding closure of schools in elementary schools in a town. You can continue to ignore me and rely on what I regard as biased legal opinion. such an ironclad provision can be put in the articles. It can be voted on with regard to creating this unified district, if you so wish, and that would give enough flexibility in the minds of MAUSD voters to potentially support such a unified union. Thank you.
Dave, I appreciate your comments. I kind of feel like you're way ahead of me on this. I just barely got that Levinson report, and I have not had time. I feel like maybe referring to it is a little bit, I'm not there. I'll be honest with you on that. And I wonder if anyone else is. We haven't been privy to that as your board has at this point. That was just something that we got. So I think that's kind of a hard thing for me to handle right now with that. But Kevin has his hand up. Kevin.
So yes, in the 11th report, it did say that. I don't know if Nate drew out legal tested or untested opinions of that. He relied heavily on a community input committee, which was strongly fielded by people that have a very strong opinion about that. So I think that's probably where he got a lot of his lead to make that statement. There is also the point of view that you know, a town can hold the whole district hostage by not allowing to be closed for a variety of reasons, and you know, it makes a whole lot more sense to have this a district-wide vote discussion. You know, there has been things said to the effect that if a town if a district has a good reason, a town will go along with it. The flip side is if a town has a good reason, a district could go along with it. So I think, you know, Nate came down pretty heavy on that. I agree with that, but I'm not sure his basis is legal, and I'm not sure his basis is narrow scope.
Thank you, Kevin. Brad?
I think Dustin was next. Sorry.
Okay. Yep, Dustin. Yep, I thought yep, Dustin.
Oh, hi. I haven't had time to read the Levinson document that was sent to us earlier today, but I have read the emails that have come to all of us from the people in Starksboro and Lincoln, mostly Starksboro, over this last week. And, you know, one thing that's they're saying pretty consistently out of Starksboro anyways, that they're not going to be in favor of anything that doesn't explicitly have something included in the Articles Agreement that gives their town residents the right to vote on whether their school's repurposed or closed, anything impacting their K-6 kids receiving their education elsewhere. So, you know, I'm concerned not just that this merger agreement, you know, a merger won't pass for that reason if we don't include something in there, but also there are many who the next step is, if that's not included, it looks like it would likely, their next step would be to separate from the current district, similar to how Lincoln did, and that's a concern of mine that would complicate things in our area even further if they were to do that. So I know we don't need to include articles, you know, to this effect in our document, but I just have a feeling, based on feedback I'm hearing from the community, that if something's not included and they're asking for it very loud and clear, that they're not going to be in favor in it. Not only are they not going to be in favor of it, they might then look to leaving MAUSD.
Thank you, Dustin. Brad?
Yeah, just briefly to follow up on what Dustin just said, I think I mean, the flip side of not being required to put them in the articles is that there's no prohibition against putting them in. And it seems to me that it's a good idea to do it, given the community, sort of the circumstances that we're facing in the various communities. And as far as its nexus with the Levinson report, all the Levinson report does is just sort of confirm that or bolster that position. I don't think we need to decide whether Nate has a valid legal position or not. I mean, there's nothing in the law that says that we can't include something like that in articles of agreement.
Thank you, Brad. Tracy? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I wanted to speak to process and timeline, just to help you figure out as a committee how you want to manage this discussion. First, commend you for thinking not only about what might be best, but also what the communities can support and how you can convey clarity around really important issues. So it's all excellent conversation, excellent work to do. At the last meeting, we talked about preparing draft language to inform committee's discussions, and I have language from 2 committee members that you sent to me that I have ready to share with you at a future meeting, based on feedback and discussion from the last meeting. Much of this meeting and perhaps some of the next meeting with the co-chairs has been planned to do what committee members asked, which was to help create more of a big picture of all of the articles that are needed, as well as those that might be optional, so that people could really start to weigh the connections between those articles. So that's the plan for this, that was behind this agenda and perhaps the next agenda, understanding that also understanding the Levinson report was also on the radar and work that the committee very likely would want to work to understand. So just process-wise, I wanted to let you know that this topic isn't necessarily going away. It's not going away. Obviously, it's a really important one for the committee to grapple with, but also want to be sure that the community has the broader big picture understanding that folks asked for before you spent too much time going in too deeply to specifics.
Thank you, Tracy. Next, we will be discussing a meeting process. Mary Kate's going to be discussing meeting process.
Right, so we received an email that raised concerns about not taking up Dave's motion on school closures and for failure to run a proper meeting. I just want to share, so we're all on the same page, that I don't believe we've taken any formal action on any items that haven't been so warned, and certainly we haven't done so without a consensus of the full committee to move forward. With regard to Dave's motion, Erica raised this concern that school closures were not warned as an action item. I asked Dave if he was good on waiting on consideration of his motion, and he agreed. The issue of school closures is a really big and important issue, and it requires that we have a chance to learn from each other before taking any formal action. And I appreciate the good discussion that followed and look forward to further discussion as we move forward in gaining the broader perspective.
Dave?
Yeah, so my concern with regard to meeting procedures and was that, we have this proposed language that's come forward. I think this is the 3rd meeting where we've had proposed language, and we discuss the proposed language and we give a thumbs up or a thumb down. And so then it goes into some sort of document that somebody's keeping track of with all the agreements that the committee, all the things the committee has agreed to because they've done thumbs up. On no occasion do I recall there being a notification in the agenda that it was an action item, and yet the committee did in fact take action in approving language that would go forward. And you know, when you can't really have it both ways, I don't think, and play with any kind of fair rules. Either that's the way we're going to construct the thing, is we're going to have these discussions and do a thumbs up and thumbs down, then put it in a document, and then eventually we'll have an action item that will approve the entire document. Or we're going to have an action item each meeting, and we're going to act on it. I think it's unfair to myself and the citizens that are awaiting a robust discussion on school closure to not permit the same kind of process with regard to that potential article that we're going forward with the other potential articles.
Thank you, Dave. Brad?
Yeah, again, I just want to add, you know, one point here to follow up on what Dave just said. I mean, I think as a practical matter, it might make some sense to be a little more willing to put things on an action item sort of trajectory, and then if we have to table it, fine. And I also want to just point out that there is precedent in this committee for for voting on an action item that wasn't properly warned, and then which was subsequently okayed at the next meeting. So it's not like we haven't done that, if haven't sort of gone outside the quote unquote bounds of how we normally operate in the past.
Thank you, Brad. That's all great. Do you still have your hand? Do you have more? Nope. Is there any other comments? Committee board conflict of interest. Mary Kate will also speak about that.
We got an email on the topic of conflict of interest between people who are board members for MAUSD or Addison Northeast Supervisory Districts, and also on the study committee. So I included on the agenda a reference to the MAUSD and the Addison Northeast Supervisory District's conflict of interest policies for board members. The substance of the two policies for the two districts are the same, though they're not in the same order. The definition of a conflict of interest is a situation where it's defined as a situation where board members' private interest, as distinguished from the board member's interest as a member of the general public, would benefit from or be harmed by his or her actions as a board member. They include not using your position for the financial benefit of you or your family members, friends, or supporters, not soliciting or accepting anything of value in return for taking a particular position, not giving the impression that your position on any issue can be influenced by anything other than a fair representation of all sides of the question, not giving the impression that you will represent a special interest or partisan politics for personal gain, not giving the impression that you have the authority to make decisions for the board or administration, being familiar with and adhering to Vermont education law, which defines the powers of a board member with regard to financial matters, board compensation, and public bidding process. The procedure, if you believe that you have a conflict of interest, is first to disclose it to the committee. In some instances, people look for discussion and feedback regarding the disclosed or potential conflict. If in the end, study committee members thinks that they have a conflict of interest, then the proper procedure is to abstain from voting or participating in the discussion.
Thank you, Mary Kate, for clarifying the conflict of interest. And the other ways to collaborate, and the Levinson report, which, you know, came out in between. Brad's got, do you have something in refer to what Mary Kate just said, or in what's coming up? Okay.
Yeah, and just on the conflict of interest thing, I mean, I think the conflict of interest policies of MAUSD and Addison Northwest are fine. But it occurs to me, you know, as I'm sort of thinking through some of the issues that we're facing, you know, as a member both of the MAUSD board and of the study committee, if it's not a conflict of interest, those of us who do have that, wear those two hats, face a bit of a conundrum. If on the one hand, the MAUSD board resolves not to close or repurpose a school without a town vote by the town affected by such closure or repurposing, and then proceeds to have to make a decision about whether or not to pursue a merger between the two districts, when the result of which could lead to the inability of an affected town to vote on closure or repurposing, it presents a bit of again, for lack of a better word, a conundrum. And I think that's something that we have to kind of look at as we're moving forward and thinking about merger. I mean, it seems like a bit of a non-starter to follow up on some of the previous discussion tonight to vote to merge and have the result being that a town would be deprived of its vote to have a say in the implementation of a merger plan.
Thank you, Brad. Dave?
So this is an interesting topic. I think if I'm correct, the rules for the MAUSD board are that you cannot be an employee of MAUSD and serve on the board. I don't know if that's what the rule is in Addison Northwest, and if that'll be included in the Articles of Agreement. And I wonder, with regard to employment of the members of this committee, whether that is impacted at all by one's employment and where they are earning their money.
Tracy?
I could get more specific answers for you to those questions, but my 90% certain understanding is that prohibition against serving on the board for which employs you is in statute. So that doesn't need to be re-articulated. That would apply to any new governing entity. And I would also bring you back to some materials that I think we reviewed way back in August, and I can resend them, from the Agency of Education from the 2016 Act 46 era, clarifying the roles and responsibilities of school boards and study committees, and helping to highlight the statutory parameters that further eliminate the technical considerations around conflict of interest and service on the committee as a distinct entity with its own responsibilities that are separate from that of the board. Individually, of course, Brad's right. You need to think through what your values are as an individual wearing your multiple hats, including as a board member, but I can resend some of those resources as well if that would be helpful.
Kevin?
So in regards to the MAUSD vote on protecting closure, repurposing and whatnot, I'll just make the statement that it was not a unanimous decision. And there are two different points of view, and I'm not sure why we would be we would need to keep those two different points of view out of this discussion.
Thank you for all of those comments and information. It's good. Mary Kate, do you, well, Erica's got her hand up and Dave too. So, okay. Erica?
Oh, I just wanted to say to the question that Dave had about, you know, whether it's appropriate for people in this merger study committee to be employees of the school districts, because if it's not appropriate for them to be on a school board, is it okay for them to be here? And I think the answer, I'm obviously not a lawyer, but the sort of common sense answer and the answer I get from my experience working on contracts, negotiating contracts, is that we as a merger committee are not in charge of anybody's hiring, firing, or salaries. So the people that teach in the schools have just as much stake in this discussion as anyone else. And this merger committee is not determining they're working or not working. So I don't see there being any conflict. And in fact, I see it as very valuable to have the voices of the people who are working in the district as a resource to the rest of us on the committee. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Erica. Dave?
Thank you, Erica, for that, because I found Tracy's response vague, and I wondered if I wished for a more accurate interpretation. So because, you know, if we have high school at Mount Abe and middle school at Virgins, there's likely to be quite a number of middle school teachers that aren't going to, will be no longer employed in the Mount Abe building, and a number of high school teachers that will not be employed at the high school. I mean, we're doing this to save money, right? And I think a lot of the savings comes in staff, if I'm not mistaken, from the budgetary presentation. So there is some implications with regard to mergers regarding employment. And I suppose the superintendents would make the argument that without a merger, the staff cuts might actually be more dramatic but different than they would be under a unified union. So I think it does impact employment. So I'm thankful for your answer, Erica. I wonder what the legal answer is.
Thank you, Dave.
Dave, I'll be happy to get you that for a future meeting, as I said.
Okay, Mary Kate, are you, okay, yeah, the conflict of interest and other ways to collaborate, and the Levinson report is all sort of
I already really covered that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do, I covered it above because I wanted Brad to be clear about what we're talking about. We were just, but I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Brad?
Yeah, I have some remarks I'd like to make regarding collaboration, which really is totally irrespective of whether this committee votes to merge or not to vote. It has to do with sort of information and information gathering. I was struck by Troy's and Dave's comments about thinking outside the box at the last study committee meeting. I personally am undecided about whether a merger is a good idea or not a good idea. Although, frankly, I do have some concerns about merging, the transportation implications and the equity issues involved are not the least of them. If it turns out to be the best way, if a merger turns out to be the best way to serve our kids, then I would support a merger. However, I believe that the individual towns have a right to vote on any proposed merger and its implications. I fully support Dave's last motion at the last meeting that any articles of agreement include such a safeguard. Given this, I'm concerned that in our sort of march towards compiling articles of agreement for a possible merger, we're losing sight of the original purpose of establishing a dialogue between MAUSD and Addison Northwest. Before the 706 mechanism was put in place by the districts, the discussion focused, at least on the MAUSD side, on how to expand then existing collaboration between the two school districts in an effort to economize and improve programs. The vast majority of the time over the last few months in this committee has been spent on the pros and cons of governance restructuring. Sure, we've had lots of concerning prognostications about demographics and financial pressures, and lots of talk about the uncertainties and challenges surrounding us, including housing shortages, pupil waiting studies, spending thresholds, COVID migration, state and federal COVID and infrastructure funding, income-based versus property-based taxation, et cetera. By way of example, I think that the committee's governance preference for a unified district as opposed to a supervisory union had as much to do with the complicated system of the latter as it did about how one governance structure over the other might yield greater benefits to our kids. In addition, our community engagement process has suggested that folks are far more interested in the specifics of collaboration than about merger governance. I think that we need to have more information about the specific steps that we can take, merger or no merger, to manage the challenges we face. To this end, I would propose that we establish a task force to look precisely at what activities the two districts could undertake, in addition to existing programs like lacrosse and football, for example, and what areas of collaboration would improve the economies of scale and be of mutual benefit to the two districts. The task force would be asked to identify the activities, evaluate current costs and effectiveness, and project how such costs might be lowered and effectiveness increased. On a macro and administrative level, joint transportation seems to be a non-starter, but there are other possibilities, including staffing, itinerant services, human resources, community economic development, regional policy development, community outreach, bulk purchasing, shared equipment, facilities management, financial planning, curriculum development, and others. On a more programmatic level, advanced placement, vocational education, internships, work-study programs, STEM programs, ESL programs, birth to pre-K programs, personalized learning programs, speakers programs, and other enrichment programs, language study, music, theater, sports, and others.
Thank you, Brad.
I'm not quite done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I would think that such a task force.
Yeah, it's 7:30, so we kind of want to wrap up this discussion. But okay, go.
Okay, I'm here for the long haul. I would think that the task force would be comprised of no more than 8 or so people to be determined, but might include from each district a study committee member, an appointee of the superintendent, a teacher or principal, a curriculum specialist, and a community member. We might also need to add at some point someone to help crunch numbers. Their job would be to provide a comprehensive report and set of recommendations for consideration by the study committee and our communities. Tonight, I'd like to ask this committee to approve taking this idea to the next level by identifying several among us to define the collaboration task force's mission, creation, operation, and timeline. I'm able to work on this, but I would be glad to cede this role to others. However, Kevin, apologies, Kevin, is my peer review partner on the MAUSD board. And because we often tend to see issues through different lenses, I would be pleased to work with him and with 1 or 2 other committee members from Addison Northwest. Finally, I ask these remarks, which I have put in writing, be made part of tonight's meeting minutes. I'll provide a transcript to the secretary. And I further appreciate any thoughts and comments committee members might have on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, Mary Kate is done. Okay, we're going to move on to number 6, and that is review the articles approved at the January 3rd, 2022 meeting. Did everybody?
Thank you, Martha. I'll just do this really quickly. The articles that were discussed at the meeting, the draft version, have been updated, and there are 4 changes that were made that I just want to bring to your attention and give committee members an opportunity to say that seems to be headed in the right direction. That's not the right direction. That's surprising. Any general feedback. We talked last time in article number 1 and throughout the document around confusion around the names of the entities we were discussing. So article 1 includes the state district number behind the names of the necessary districts. So that's in article 1 now. Article 3 has been updated to change the word from equitable to equal. And article 4 has the language that you added around to clarify that while no construction is needed as part of this unified union, the proposed possible, if it's recommended, unified union that's currently being modeled, that doesn't mean there will never be construction. So that was added per your discussion and request. And although you did not reach preliminary agreement or grant preliminary approval to Article 7, throughout that article, anywhere a district, pre-Act 46 district was included, the district number was added, and we did replace general terms like forming districts to the specific names of the pre-Act 46 districts. And lastly, we added that requested link to the legal documents that relate to Virgin's Union Elementary School. So that's all there. Certainly would welcome any discussion, questions, feedback, clarification. Just wanted to make sure the updated draft reflects what you thought it would.
Doesn't appear to be. Are there any comments? It doesn't appear. Nobody has their hand up. So we're going to move on to Article 7, which is Articles 8, 11, and 12. We will not be taking any action. We did hear everyone at the last meeting that was a concern. We're just going to express agreements or not agreements and talk about it. So Articles 8, which is forming entities. Well, Tracy, you can, I'm not going to talk about it.
Happy to roll. Again, want to reiterate what I said earlier, based on your discussion and feedback at the last meeting. We heard you, and that you really need an opportunity to create a big picture around the totality of the Articles of Agreement and have the opportunity to think about the connections before going back to specifics on any more articles. So, as I said earlier, my goal and the request of the co-chairs is that I support you with spending some time on that big picture, acknowledging at the same time that there are things that you're going to be working on, like understanding the Levinson report for MAUSD. So just taking you back before I dive into specific new articles, in my head, I think about the Articles of Agreement as falling into 3 categories. there are articles that have to do with how a unified union or whatever union you're constructing is made, what it is. There's articles that relate to how it's governed, and there are articles that relate to the transition, how the transition from whatever the current state is to whatever the new state is occurs. The how it's made or what it is articles, you've already really talked about, and they have to do with establishing the forming districts, the operating structure, the grades to be served. The name would be on that list too, I think. In terms of how it's governed, in my mind, a lot of these things relate to things that are the responsibilities of voters in statute. And that had to do with disposal of property. We've talked about it, but not reached any resolution. The structure of the board, the way the electorate votes, whether it's Australian ballot or in person in an annual meeting. And that's an area where the committee might ultimately decide to have some discretionary articles around things like community involvement and an expression of your preference for a supervisory district, if that's something the committee wants to include. And then that third chunk of articles, for me, I put the date of the formation, the date of the vote, the date the new entity starts to exist. That creates a transition window, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. Transitional considerations like school of attendance, which we started to get some background on, transportation, staff assignments, collective bargaining agreements, and school closure and or ceasing to use a school building for educational purposes could potentially fit in that category in my head or in anybody's head. But the point is, those are the big chunks of types of articles that a study committee needs to address, and some of the topics that study committees could add as well. So over this meeting and the next meeting, really want to talk through conceptually some draft language for starting points for certain articles, and for some areas remain much more conceptual, like around board composition, to allow you to have some discussion about strategies that align with the values and meet the needs of your communities and position you, I think, well for the direction that you want to go if you elect to merge. So around board operations, as we did with school closure, keep it pretty conceptual until you have some opportunities for deep discussion. So starting with some that are a little more concrete and give you an idea of the frame for some of the articles that we're going to remain conceptual with. Wanted to look at articles 8, 11, and 12. To the draft articles done. And basically that simply establishes that when the new Unified Union School District, to be named, becomes fully operational to provide educational services, the forming districts would cease to exist. That's an article that was in both Addison Northwest and MAUSD's articles for their original formations. And again, the dates would need to be added to the documents, but based on your prior discussions, could be July 1, 2023. And typically, the ceasing to exist of the forming districts is maybe 6 or 7 months after, leaving a window for forming districts to conclude any business that might be necessary prior to their complete discontinuation of operations. From what has been observed through prior transitions, it looks like audits are the only thing that those entities need to consider. So it depends on your typical timelines for audit return. My guess is they're done into the boards around now in January prior to town meeting. So it might be January or February that actually works best. But that's typically what this article, which establishes that the forming entities for a unified union cease to exist, look like. Jumping down to Article 11, that establishes the date of a vote. You have been working tentatively with a November 2022 vote date. This article also could include language on the form of a vote. I think one of the two, Addison Northwest or MAUSD, had sample language or the draft language of the ballot here. This committee could choose to do that as well. Just need to pay attention to the requirements in statute, which frame out the required language for you and require that any language for the question be presented in a substantially the same form as was as is in statute. And lastly, the new district would commence full education operations on a specific date, and that could be July 1, 2023. Again, those things are totally up to you to decide. The intent of reviewing them tonight was, again, to give you an idea of the timeline for a vote, this transition period, and a timeline, a potential timeline for a new entity beginning to exist. Not tonight, but at a future meeting, we can go over in greater detail what that transition period looks like and the work of a new board in preparing for the initial operations, as well as the things that are required to be addressed for the transition that are in Article 4 or 5, I think it is, around transportation, collective bargaining agreements, and things like that. And school administrators and district administrators are preparing to help talk about what the transition opportunities and pathways might look like if a unified union was formed, which could be useful and foundational based on some of the discussion tonight to think about what are the opportunities for collaboration and independent of how they're facilitated in terms of collaboration or a governance change, thinking about the timeline and what those big pieces might be. So that's the overview of those three articles. Understanding that there isn't an expectation that there's a decision on any of these now, that this is just background and context as one of the steps on the way to getting you to the full big picture. Are there any questions on that so far? Do you want me to just call on him, Martha?
Evan? Yeah, sorry.
I don't need to, I certainly don't need an answer, and I just put this out here. We were marching down a path, and Tracy, you mentioned the 2023 start date, but given the rosy picture the state has right now, I'm wondering if maybe our superintendents, before we revisit this again, reevaluate the necessity of that turnaround, if it's still real or if there's some cushion there given the rosy picture the state's laying out right now.
I've added it to the list, and we'll follow up with Pat and Sheila. And again, they're preparing to share their thoughts with you about transition year 1, year 2, and we'll definitely add this to the list of things that they can talk about.
Okay, moving on. It appears there isn't any more discussion. So Article 8, considerations for board composition, provide directions for draft articles.
Yeah. We want to get through as much of this as we can, but be respectful on time. So if we don't get to Article 14 tonight, that's totally not a problem. Board composition is one of those things that has lots of considerations, and there are lots of options. And it's an area where I think you'll see lots of connections with the values and priorities of the communities that you are representing and considering in your planning process. So I'm glad that you reminded us of the importance of a big picture so that you can factor this into your thinking and decision making. So the required articles on boards, a future board, has 2 parts. One part is board representation. What's the structure of a new governing board? And how do we ensure that people are represented in whatever the board structure is going forward? And the second part is about the transition and setting up transitional terms so that there are staggered elections so that only 1/3 of a board's seats are up in any given year. So we're gonna kind of push aside the staggered terms piece and talk about the considerations around structures for a school board for a possible unified union. And then that's the important part to work out. And then we can easily backwards map into that board transition and those staggered terms. Resources on board configuration were shared at the last meeting, and they're also linked in this meeting. I'm going to take a look at the document that is considerations or context that was dated 1/3/22. If you printed it last time, it was dated 1/3/21. I guess I hadn't fully made the shift to the new year, but the version on the web now has 1/3/22 on there. So it might be helpful to have that open in front of you if you can. What that document begins with is some information that is directly from the Vermont AOE website. And it includes some items that, or parameters in law that a committee needs to keep in mind when thinking about how a school board is structured. So the requirements in law are that the total number of board members needs to not exceed 18. Each member town is entitled to at least 1 board member, and board membership has to be structured to meet proportionality requirements of the Equal Protection Clause. That's the 1 person, 1 vote kind of concept, and that people need to be represented proportionately in governing bodies. Statutes also allow strategies like at-large board members, meaning from anywhere in the district, and also at-large voting by everyone in the district. And they authorize weighted voting if that's a strategy that helps in constructing a board design to ensure proportionality and help create a structure where constituents feel like their vote counts and their voice matters. So with those considerations, that creates 3 options, which have variations, but 3 major options. One is proportionate by town. The second option is at large. And then the third is a hybrid model, which includes elements of proportionate and at large structures. So again, as I talk through some of these structures, it's a good opportunity to think about what's most important in terms of governance and representation in your region, and perhaps what strategies you're most interested in diving into, so that we can hone in on language that might meet your needs and or create structures where you can get some feedback from your communities about what makes sense. So I'm gonna look on to the second page. This is data that you've seen before. It's primarily the important data is the 2020 census data, but I continue to include prior year's data just because it's interesting. You know that you have 10 towns and 2 districts, and populations range from 446 to 3,782. So there's many different sizes of towns in the regions that we're considering. With these populations in mind, I'm going to walk you through the 3 options: proportionate, at large, and hybrid. And then hopefully either tonight or at a future meeting, be sure that there's time for lots of committee discussion about how the various options fit with the values and priorities, and get that direction for drafts for feedback, or to narrow a recommendation for you to dive into more closely. So moving on to page 3 as a frame of reference, I'm going to start with at large and then jump to proportional and then go back to hybrid. So we're going to go out of order here. The at large model, I'll explain to you what a fully at large board might look like. To create one, you could select a board size of up to 18 members, because that's the maximum in law. And actually, I think 3 is the minimum. Board members in an at-large board structure can reside anywhere in the new union school district and can be nominated by any voter in the school district. And all voters get to vote on a single list of candidates. In an at-large structure, weighted voting isn't allowed. So basically, if you wanted to have a 7-member board, you would. There'd be 7 seats. Those board members could come from any community in the merged district, and everyone in every community gets to vote on every candidate. So it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter where the candidate's from. They represent you. You vote on their candidacy, and they're accountable to you. So that's completely at large. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm seeing some head nodding. I would, it doesn't, Dave, do you have a particular question? Or Kevin, you have your hand up. So let me start with Kevin.
So I guess I'm thinking of trying to correlate some of these to area boards. I know MAUSD is based on population in each town. And Middlebury has something that's maybe at large. I'm not really sure, but they have something that's different and controversial. So yeah, I don't know if we could correlate these 2 different boards around the area.
They have a hybrid, so let's not go there yet. This would actually be, imagine the old town construct and town school district. It's one board that's elected by everybody in the town. And it didn't matter which area of the town you lived in. If you wanted to run for the board, you got a petition and you ran for the board. In a hybrid model, the same would be true within the parameters of the new school district. anybody from any community could run for a board seat, and everybody from every community votes on every board seat. It kind of creates one super town, one mega town, if you go back to the old town school district model. Dave, did that help at all, or do you still have a question?
I don't have a question. It's just we don't run the things that way in MAUSD at this point. Each town elects their person or people to the board to create the correct balance. So that would be a fairly large change from how we currently do business in Mount Abe.
Yep, absolutely. And it may not be a direction you want to go. I just want to be sure you understand all of the options. I would add before we move from this, that in this method, the question about whether Lincoln is in the unified union or not would be kind of a moot question. If they're in, Lincoln residents can run for the board, and Lincoln residents can vote on all board seats. And if they're not, they're not. So the situation with Lincoln and whether or not they're advisory is not an issue in the at-large structure. Going to jump down to something that's probably much more familiar, which is the proportional options. In a proportional model, the models that I've drafted include Lincoln while their withdrawal is pending. And in a proportional situation, the board members must reside in the town to which a seat is assigned. Nominating petitions come from voters in that town that the seat is assigned to, and voting for each seat is only by voters in the assigned town. In a proportional situation, weighted voting is an option. So on page 4, there are several options of a proportional board, none of which you have to accept. They all could be adjusted somewhat and somehow. And there are some examples of what weighted voting might look like. I want to take you all the way to the right, and the last 2 columns look or frame what a board composition might look like if it was a 10-member board. There are 10 towns, and remember, statute says 1 board representative for each town. And since we're talking about a 10-member board with 10 towns, if that's the size you wanted, it would be 10 seats with 1 from each town. If there was a sense that 1 from each town didn't feel proportional, weighted voting could be considered, and the weights based on population are in the column to the right of the board seats column, the very last column, which calculates the weight that each person's vote could have if, for example, the articles provided for a 10-member proportional board with weighted votings. Obviously, the pros of a weighted voting in a 10-member board of this construct is that it's very proportional. The cons are that it can be confusing, and the board would really need to have some thoughtful management processes about how votes were handled if they were weighted. So that's what a 10-member board might look like. Sarah, I'm going to circle back to you, but I want to go to some other ones to see if I can create a big picture and then answer questions. So I'm going to jump all the way to the left and look at an 18-member board. You can see in the first column is the town, the total population, and the percent of the total. In an 18-member board, seats could be apportioned as they are here, with roughly 1 seat per 1,000 citizens. However, it's not possible to do that perfectly, since some communities have less than 1,000 and some communities have fractional proportions of 1,000. So to come up with this model, assigned 1 to every town, and then assigned the remaining seats to get to 18 to those with the highest fraction above 1,000. This could be done differently. It's just a draft of how an 18-member board might be constructed with proportional representation by town. If weighted voting was to be added to that, the weighting is a little easier to think about in this construct, since there's about 18,000 citizens in the communities we're looking at. So it's roughly 1 vote per 1,000. So the weights correlate exactly to that. When looking at the weights in the column, you'll see, for example, that Bristol in this model would have 4 board members, but their total weighted votes would be 3.72. So an individual vote would be 3.72 divided by 4. Again, a complicated system to ensure super high levels of proportionality, which could be a super high priority for the committee and the communities. It also has that drawback of being confusing. Not going to explain or just mention that the next 2 columns show what a 15-member board might look like in terms of seat assignments, and then in terms of weight, if that was added. And really want to talk about a 12-member board, which has 3 columns with it. I really couldn't figure out how to assign whole seats to a 12-member board. If every community got 1, and obviously that's 10, Bristol would get 1 more because they have obviously the highest population as a town. But then I couldn't begin to think about where to assign a 2nd seat. Obviously, Ferrisburg and Vergennes are closest to another, a proportion, the closest highest proportion, but they're practically equal. So it was really hard to think about where to assign one. So this is really an 11-member board. I did calculate for you the weights if it was a 12-member board. I can't remember, I did this quite a while ago. I can't remember how I did that. I would have had to assign a seat somewhere, so I must have for the calculations of a 12-member board. But just in case, I gave you the weights for an 11-member board to the right of that. Want to say that in these models as well, if for some reason Lincoln completes its withdrawal from the current district and does not vote to join as an advisory district, these models could still hold true with 1 less seat in them. Or there could be a strategy for redeploying a seat if Lincoln doesn't join, and we could perhaps structure the articles very carefully to prepare for that possibility. So now I will pause and ask Sarah. You're muted.
Hi. So is the difference that you have to then have a weighted vote if you go with this type of model? Because my understanding of Addison Central is that the reason why they do all at-large voting is because some of their towns are so small that Middlebury was super dominant. And so for them to have a board under the level, they all had to vote on all of their towns' representatives coming in. And so that's what made it a hybrid versus otherwise they would have had to do this weighted model. I'm just verifying that.
I will show you the hybrid next, but your description of the Middlebury Addison Central situation makes sense. I would say that you don't have to do weighted. It's not required, it's an option, but it's worth the committee thinking carefully about what you think is reasonable in terms of proportionate representation, if that is the structure that best meets the needs of your communities. And if there isn't a construct in a board of 18 that meets that for you, then maybe weighted voting is something you want to consider. I don't think it's commonly used, but you know, you can see why people think about other options because of how confusing it could make it.
I think it makes it really good. Sorry. Weighted voting sounds really complicated.
Yeah, I agree. The weighted voting sounds really complicated, but it does make sense to me. There's some hard math to do every time you take a vote, but I do like that it's giving a proportionate level of you know, say in the outcome of a vote. My question though is what happens? Can this be flexed in a way that we, you know, that if Lincoln doesn't stay part of the union, or also the possibility if Starksboro, say we merge and they don't like it and then they vote to withdraw, how then does this change? If we have a weighted system, can the weight of the votes just be redistributed and the members of the board who were from the town that withdrew recuse themselves? Would it work like that, and will it be spelled out in the articles? I'm just wondering what happens in those scenarios.
If this becomes an area, the direction that you think is the right direction, we would dive into those things. I've seen articles of agreement that do provide for recalculating weights with census, with the completion of the census every decade. And also you might include language around recalculating weights if a district withdraws. So all good questions and things to address if once you know what directions you really think you want to flesh out. Kevin?
Yeah, I just think we want to be prepared for that scenario if it happens.
I agree that would be wise. Kevin, you're muted. There you go.
I'm sorry. I just want to make the comment that, at least from my perspective, if let's say Waltham, who is significantly underweighted to have an A representative, coming from a larger town, that doesn't bother me that they might end up with disproportionate representation due to their size. And, you know, there could be some advantages of perspective from that.
Yeah. Again, as a committee, you really need to grapple with, if proportionality is your strategy, grapple with what you think is reasonable and your best shot at meeting the proportionality test in the very unlikely event that it was ever challenged. Dustin, I don't know if your hand is still up or it's up again. New question or, okay. So I'm gonna move on to hybrid. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just forgot to put it down. It's down now.
Great. So now I'm going to move on to hybrid, back to page 2. So There are a bunch of options in hybrid as well. You could see that there's all kinds of possibilities just within the proportional construct. The hybrid is a mixture of obviously at-large and proportional representation. And these are three options to give you a starting point around what you might think about if you wanted to go with a hybrid model. And as I think Sarah noted, other systems in the region have looked at hybrid to try and balance those many priorities around proportionality and adequate voice. So option one is again, a combination of designated or proportional and at large. And I suggest starting with a board size over 10, between 11 and 18. The idea being that you meet proportionality requirements and you ensure voice for all communities by assigning one seat to each town, 10, or it could be less if somebody wasn't a part of the union. And for those seats, the board member assigned to those seats needs to reside in the town that the seat was assigned to, right? If you're going to be a representative of Moncton, you should live in Moncton. And for those seats, the petitions are signed by the voters in the town that they're assigned to. You could also have additional seats, up to 8, up to the max of 18, that are considered at large. And they could be seats that are filled by people from any community. They could all be from one community. They could all be from 8 different communities of the 10. They could be nominated by any voter in the new district. They're at large, so they're voted on by everybody. And in this model, voting on all seats, including the ones designated by town, would be voted on by all members of the district. That's how you could meet the proportionality requirements. And that kind of model has been tested in statute. So although you might be a Bristol representative, everybody from all of the towns would still get to represent you or get to vote for you. So that's one hybrid option where there's some designation by town to ensure everybody has voice. There's at-large seats, but everybody from every community votes on every seat. Another option is proportional allocation with at-large voting. Again, a way to broaden community voice in who represents everyone on the board. So you could select one of those proportional models of 10 to 18 seats. Probably not 10, you could do 10, but more likely a higher number, closer to 18 probably in this model. But everybody votes on all seats, regardless of where you live. A third option to get you thinking about a hybrid model is that you could potentially assign seats to groups of towns proportionately, providing for nominations from within that cluster of towns and voting by that cluster of town. So for example, a 10-member board, and this is just based on population, not based on anything else. A 10-member board might be comprised of 3 seats to the combined towns of Ferrisburgh, Virgins, and Waltham, 1 seat to Panton, Addison, 1 seat to Bristol, Lincoln, and then 3 seats to Moncton, New Haven, Starksboro. You could combine Panton, Addison, Bristol, and Lincoln and have 2 seats. So every chunk gets to vote on more than 1 seat. So there are
that's all. That only adds up to 8 in your model.
Yep. And that in a hybrid or an at-large model, you don't necessarily have to have 1 for each town. You have broader flexibility. because everybody gets to vote on every seat in the option 1. It's 8:16 and there are things to talk about. Mary Kate, you have your hand up. Let me answer your question, but then I would invite you to think and just ruminate on this until we bring it back on an agenda, and think about what you think might be worth diving into further, anticipating that there'll be some committee discussion about strategies for board composition or board structure that aligns with the values of your communities.
Just had a quick question on option 3. With the representation you put in there, did that take into consider, did you do the math in terms of the, yeah, you did the math in terms of population?
I think I did.
Okay.
But once you dive into it, if you say this is something we're really interested in, I hope other people do the math as well. I did this maybe a month ago, so I don't feel as confident about my math as I might have a while ago.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to move on to Article 14 to discuss that, or to hear about.
In the interest of time, I suggest we table that and just go on to communication and public comment, and I will bring you back to that at a future meeting.
Okay, excellent. We'll be tabling that for a future meeting. Communication key points for this evening's meeting. Does anyone have something they'd like to add?
Well, we continued on our overview of the article structure for a possible merger.
Yep. Erica?
I think we should address that we had a discussion about how to proceed in our discussion about incorporating school closures into our articles somehow. And that we also would like to proceed with discussing I forget how we formulated it, but talking about collaboration in general after everyone has had a chance to look at the study from MAUSD. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the person who did the study.
Levinson.
I got it. I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Brad?
Well, we had a presentation about a possible proposal to make our work more effective, but was not discussed by the larger committee.
Dave?
Thank you. So I've had occasion to delve into the minutes of MAUSD over the last year, and I came across the meeting in which we discussed and eventually voted on whether to form a merger committee to join with Addison Northwest. And that meeting was interesting. As I recall, it was a fairly wide-ranging discussion. And the notion was that the coordination or collaboration with Addison Northwest could be much broader than a 706 committee. And the minutes are kind of vague. My recollection is that we, in fact, didn't specifically say a 706 committee. The real gist of the board, and maybe other MAUSD board members that are on this committee can recollect as well, or go back in the minutes, was that—
Is this a communication key point, or is this a point? I'm just trying to.
Well, this is I don't know. Is this communication with the public? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, you know, the communication key points that we do at this time, we gather what we've discussed at the meeting so that we can get them out to the public. That we're just taking the key points, so it's rather quicker than you know, I don't recall talking about the minutes of a MAUSD school board meeting. So I'm just trying to.
So I'm sorry, I'll be more succinct. So Brad brought up a proposal earlier, and I think it ought to be considered in the sense that MAUSD board agreed to join this merger committee with a broader context than just a 706 committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, in my presentation, I did refer to the fact that MAUSD was looking to pursue collaboration, not necessarily a 706 mechanism.
Okay. Thank you. Other communication key points. Mary Kay?
We talked and learned about different potential ways to comprise a new board.
Kevin?
So I think it might be noteworthy to mention that we changed our meeting schedule around so that this board has the opportunity to tune in on the MAUSD January 25th presentation by K212 New Ideas, as opposed to having a close meetings in March or February or wherever it was.
Okay. Is it Carol?
Should we also mention in the key points a link to the January 25th meeting so that the public can have the opportunity to attend as well?
Any other key points that anybody wants to add to what we have to go out? Having no others, a possible op-ed. That is, all right, Kate. Yep.
So at the last meeting, members of the public and others, and also study committee members talked about there being some confusion about what we're doing and trying to clarify that for members of the public. So Martha and I drafted a proposed op-ed and wanted to share that with the committee, get feedback on it, and put it out for publication if that's is what the committee wants to do.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I'm not against an op-ed. I'd like to review it before it goes out, and certainly before I'd sign off on it.
It's attached to the agenda.
I know I haven't had time. I haven't had time.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make some comments. Is there a time frame when you would submit this to whoever you're going to submit it to?
Do you want me to respond?
Well, I don't know how many people have read it and looked at it and have some feedback, because maybe not everybody has read it, and that might be. Let's take some feedback. Yeah, I mean, all right, we've got some people that have read it and have had some feedback. And okay, Kevin.
I guess I have mixed emotions about if I haven't read it yet, to hold it up. It was part of the preparation package, and I'm personally okay with it. And I think we should decide as a group whether to go forward it or not, and not hold it off until whenever. I think it's timely, and I think it's a good thing to get out there.
Dave?
So as I just said, I don't think that MAUSD board voted to join a 706 committee. So that particular line I don't find is helpful. The line that says the committee's responsibilities are specified in Vermont law 16 VSA 706B. I think the rest of it is acceptable. I don't agree with it. It wouldn't be the op-ed I'd write, but I'm in the minority.
Sarah?
I think there's nothing, it just straight up says what it is we're doing, and it doesn't have anything offensive in it, and it gets to the point, and I think it's nice to have our voice be out there, and I appreciate your time taking to write it. And just to go back to something that I feel like gone back through so many times, the only option to forming a study committee is to actually form it legally with the 706B, and that is why we did vote to do that.
Thank you, Sarah. Erica?
Yeah, I would echo what Kevin said. I think about that. I think the timing, we don't really want to hold it up too much, I think. And I think it is, as Sarah said, a good statement of what we're doing, what until maybe today I understood us to be agreed that we're all doing. And when I read it, I thought, yeah, this is a good statement of what we're doing, but it doesn't, for me, acknowledge our presence as people on this committee. And I feel like that's begun to be really overlooked, that from communications that I've read and seen, I'm starting to feel like we as a committee are seen as just maybe lawyers or outsiders or people with no investment in what we're doing. And that could not be further from the truth. I feel like every person here is spending their time putting themselves in the public eye and carefully considering what our requirement is, what we understand to be our mission, because we care deeply and passionately about our towns, about our children, about our families, about the future. And I in an op-ed, I want to read that in the newspaper. Like, it just, as a member of the public reading an op-ed in the newspaper, when people speak from the heart, it moves me. And I think all the information in this letter is good, but I would like it to also be speaking from the heart. But that's just, you know, my personal perspective.
Thank you, Erica. Keith?
Yeah, there's nothing controversial here. This is pretty to the point what we do here. This committee has talked about being a 706B since the first few meetings we've had here. I'm not sure why that's controversial all of a sudden. And to Erica's point, I think it's her point is a good one. It would be nice maybe to have a little bit more of the humanity in it. We are all community members here who are deeply invested. That would be nice to reflect that here.
Dave?
I'm sorry, it's my hands up from earlier.
Anybody else have Dustin?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo everything that Keith and Erica just said. I read the op-ed piece. I think it's good to clarify what the work of the committee is for everyone out there. But Erica brings a really good point too for an op-ed piece. You know, what if I'm, you know, reading it as a community member, I'd like to know who the makeup of this board is, and you know, see them as people and know that they're being well represented.
Mary?
Well, to Keith and Sarah's point, I agree. And I think it would be really easy with what is it, the second or third paragraph down says, but our committee is a good representation of our communities and we're discussing many viewpoints and ideas. It might be good to just say something like, we are teachers, we are school board members, we are parents, we are coaches, we're mentors, just maybe just a little bit more language that explains who we are and how representative we are of the communities. That's my only suggestion.
Okay, yeah. And Mary Kate.
Yeah, I like the suggestion that's been made to add that language in about who we are and our investment. So Martha, if you feel the same way, maybe we can make those changes, and I don't know if you guys want to sort of just give us the okay to submit it with those changes. That's what I would propose.
And a thumbs up. Okay, and a thumbs down. And if thumbs down from Dave, yeah, and if anyone, feel free to email until it's done, you know, to take in consideration for those that haven't been able to read it, but. Town meeting. Oh, that's good. Okay. Town meeting is on here because we had talked about communicating at town meeting or ways to, I think Tracy's going to talk about it more to discuss, but I'll have Tracy.
Yeah. I'll just bring you back to what we had talked about. We had talked about potentially using town meeting as a time to get information out and perhaps get feedback from communities, given where you are in the process. Mary Kate and Martha thought that perhaps just making the improved op-ed broadly available might be something really useful to do around town meetings, since people are gathering together and talking about governance and all kinds of things, and that this just might also be a useful tool to strategically make available to provide an update on the committee's work at town meeting.
Mary Kate?
I was just going to add to it. It looks like town meetings will likely not be in person because of COVID. And so that also influenced how we wanted to proceed with this.
Correct. Any other comments about town meeting? We've got our communication key points. We've got some feedback on the possible op-ed, and we've discussed town meeting. Now we're going to move on to public comment. We are over on time. So Mr. Olson, you're first. You're muted. I can't. Yeah, there you go. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, there you go. I defer to Jeff and Jan first. I'll say something if I need to at the end.
Okay, Jeff? Donham? All right, I'll move to Jan McCleary and Rich Warren.
Hi, this is Rich Warren. I'm from Starksboro. I know this time is to raise issues of concern related to the charge of the committee, according to your agenda for today. And I'd like to inquire about your charge. It says you're to analyze the advisability of forming a union school district. Can you provide any succinct answer or a valid answer of how your advisability is looking today? And do you know exactly, well, not exactly, but you know within 5% plus or minus how much you're going to save? And that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Marguerite?
Yes, thank you. I hope you include in your next meeting agenda Brad Johnson's recommendation that you create a subcommittee to look at concrete ways the two districts could collaborate, rather than just focusing on the minutia of governance of a merger structure that may or may not happen. The creative ideas that may arise from this subcommittee will have a very good chance of serving the students and taxpayers of both districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, are you available yet? I'm not hearing from Jeff. Mr. Olson?
Yes, I think
so.
So.
Jeff is there. Jeff is here.
Yep.
Okay.
I was really disturbed about the lack of attention paid to all the community involvement in the last meeting. I mean, all the input, very little of it was really present except for a few members, Dave Sharp, Dustin Corrigan, and Ed McGuire, and a few others. I'd like to pass it on to Herb, make sure he's heard, because you're just not hearing from the community, and you're not actually spending your time usefully if you're not talking to the community.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I think one of the members of the committee at one point said that, around communications that needed to get some communications because the community is confused about what the Merger Study Committee is doing. I'll speak at least for Starksboro. I think we're perfectly clear about what the committee is doing. We're not confused at all. I think this meeting has added, frankly, a lot of clarity to what you're doing. Collaboration is not in order. Guaranteeing a town right to vote is not in order. And the way things have been going, it'll never be in order. Those are my takeaways. You might change, but your mind on these things, but that's my takeaway. And we'll act accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with public comment? I don't see anyone. It appears there's no other public comment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it, Sarah.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye or thumbs up. Aye, aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion, meeting is adjourned. Have a great weekend. Thank you.